So much history is behind these Handsworth Revolution, the steel poles, isn't it? London-based. Welcome to Ferrity Radio. My name is Freestyle. Today is a Sunday Fiti Fata show. Fiti Fata is like expressing your thought. You know, there's no structured way, to express your thoughts, So that's what it's about. And I've got a very special guest here this Sunday. Is an organization, if I should say so, I knew nothing about. I've had conversations about, in terms of, Humanist funeral, but that's about it. I wasn't even there, but I knew nothing about Humanist organization, the Humanist philosophy, or what they're about and what they do. And I was very happy to come across on last week, Saturday, when I was at the National Film Theatre to see Friends of Fela, and met the group, and I said, wow, okay, I've heard, but from the black perspective, that is like an ingredient that I can really prepare to cook, here on Ferrity Radio. And so I'm going to be speaking to them here. I've got three members of the group. I've got Clive, Eru Edu, and Lola Timubu, and Audrey Simeon right here. And we're going to know more about the Association of Black Humanists. Who are they? What do they do? How do they come about? I mean, how can one become a member? And so on and so forth. There is so much that involves around this organization that I'm going to learn from them this afternoon here on Ferrity Radio. I'm sure if you want to participate, you can give us a call on 0730 541 7668. I think I was nearly giving out my personal number, as if you don't know. But 0730 541 7668 for all your questions, and also we take some live links as well. All right? And later on, I shall be having a guest as well. He's a top-ranked percussionist, Michael, from the Big Time Drum Production. So he's going to be here talking about what he does. Probably we can have one or two bongos here this day on Ferrity Radio. So I want to welcome you on board. We're going to stick to some reggae for now, and I'll bring in my special guest here by 3:30, giving him time to really relax properly inside the studio here on Ferrity Radio. Let's move on now to another classic group, the Eptons, with Book of Rules. Wow, that was another one there. Otis Redding there with These Arms of Mine. Well, we've got 19 minutes before 3, and we've got also about 11 minutes or so 10 minutes before we bring here members of the Black Humanist organization. They're here, and I want to know more. I want to learn more. So let's stick around, and also if you got a question, you can either text us on the 0730 541 7668, or you can give us a call live here in the studio. We're here to take your calls and to interact and to share knowledge that will impact in tomorrow's future, tomorrow's future. So, yeah, the Humanist, or the Black Humanist organizations are here. I've got Clive, I've got Lola, and I've got Audrey. And later on, I'll be speaking to Mike as well from the Big Time Production. He is a percussionist. But for now, I think this is much more solid conversation we're going to have here just before George Benson on a Sunday on Ferrity Radio of Liberia. In fact, Liberia wasn't colonized as well. But, when you talk about great fighters and revolutionaries, people who were standing up against things that we're now standing up, started way back there, way back. Check out the Crew people, the KROO. Amazing history. Well, I'm going to bring in my special guest here, but before I do, this one is going to Lola, who was talking about Fela. So I said, yeah, Miss Road. He says, yeah, how does that sound? Well, before I bring in my special guest, Audrey Clive, and Lola. I'm going to dedicate this fella track to all of them because we met actually the day that they showed the film, the documentary of fella, my friend fella from Carlos. So here we are with fella. This is Miss Road. A very great orator there, fella, Anikulapo Kute. I tell you, man. Miss Road here on Feferity Radio. Well, that goes out to my special guest here. And I want to greet them and welcome them here on Feferity Radio. I want to say, Audrey Simeon, welcome to Feferity Radio.
Thank you very much for having me.
Lola Timubu, welcome. And then Clive Uru Eddy.
Very, very good pronunciation. Thank you so much for that. And it's great to be here.
All members of the Association of Black Humanists. Well, I don't know who I should start with first because I don't know who among the three of you came up or started. But one thing that is fundamental question is here is who are the Association of Black Humanists?
Well, we started off about 7 years ago now, over 7 years, in 2012, October 2012. And there were 4 of us in a pub in Stoke Newington. And one of them was Lola, who's sitting opposite me now. We also had David and Jody, who are not here, as well as myself. So there were 4 of us. And we decided to start up a group for black people who are essentially non-religious, let's be honest about it. And so we wanted a group which would support people who are coming out of religions or questioning religions. And so we started, at that time we were looking for a good name, so we started as London Black Atheists.
Right.
Now, the reason that we started at all is because although there are other atheist groups around and other humanist groups around, we found that had very, very few members from the black and minority ethnic people in those particular groups. So we wanted a group which would encourage people because to come out as atheists or as humanists, because it just didn't make sense that in London, where the percentage of black and minority ethnic people is so high that there should only be 1 or 2 people in the main atheist and humanist groups. So, and it just didn't make sense. Just by the sheer force of statistics alone, there should have been so many more people. And so we started London Black Atheists, which then transformed into Association of Black Humanists, which we are now.
Right. Okay.
And at the time, as I said, we had 4 people.
Yeah.
And right now we have in the region of 754 people. So
that's a massive increase,
it's
a
quite
growth.
A big jump.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we're going to talk about, I think, from the word atheist, probably something that will not correlate with a lot of people. It's something that is really like, we're going to go into that. But Audrey, yourself, how and when, you joined this amazing Association of Black Humanist group?
I wheedled my way in, really. I accosted Lola and Clive at an event that we were at. We were at the Big Question, and Clive managed to speak at that event on national television, and I heard the word London Black Atheist, and I recognized those words. Those words represented me, and at the time I'd never heard those words together, but hearing them in that time and in that space, they resonated with me. So I chased them both down the corridor
Mhm.
and have not looked back since. I've been involved with everything that they've done because I love what they do. When I arrived, there was enthusiasm, there was everything that you needed.
Mhm.
And so I just kind of sort of sidled in and
How long ago was this?
we're looking at about 3.5 years ago now, about
Okay.
3.5, nearly 4 years ago. So yeah.
Right. Great. Lola.
Hi.
Hi. How long have you? Clive mentioned you in the process, so tell us about your involvement and how it came.
Yeah, I left religion, I think it's going to 15 years now. I think it will be 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
So when I left religion,
Mm-hmm.
um, as Africans, we are really big, when it comes to religion.
Mm-hmm.
You are either a Muslim
Mm-hmm.
or you are a Christian.
Mm-hmm.
So when you stop believing, you are, you are sort of like excluding yourself from the black community, the African community. So I was looking to see if I was the only one, because at the time, if I told someone, "Oh, I'm an atheist," they're like shocked.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just wanted to know if there were other, that it couldn't be just me.
Mm-hmm.
So I joined the Central London Humanist group, and it was from that group that I met Clive,
Mm-hmm.
and we were so happy that another African, unbelievable, a
Mm-hmm.
Nigerian.
Yeah.
But then the problem that I had when I left religion is common to people who have left religion. By the way, I want to say something about our group.
Mm-hmm.
We are not just for atheists. Um, we are for free thinkers,
Mm-hmm.
those who are questioning their faith, those who are exploring, different faiths and
Mm.
looking for a path. So we encourage everyone. We have people who are spiritual, those who are questioning things, and those who want to know.
Right.
And yes, we are that space that is exploring a lot of things about what it is to be an African outside of the conventional religion.
Right. Well, we're going to come to that as well because this is very, very interesting. Like I said, the word humanist, I think it's much more accommodating, to somebody who is struggling with faith. And now we've heard about the time that, and Lola went a little bit further as well. But Clive, I'm coming to the question. In Africa, there are traditionalists, and you're from Nigeria. And by definition, you can say they're kind of an atheist because they don't believe in the conventional faith. And the conventional faith don't recognize African traditions. Well, we can say in the Old Testament is relevant. You can see a lot more African tradition plays a role in terms of how they sacrifice, harvestry, and all of these things. Why was it difficult for people to be recognized, to recognize himself as an atheist from your experience and what you've come to find? Why is it that difficult?
It's a case that we live in a certain society. In this case, we live in England, and so we are living in that society. You kind of tend to absorb or reject what that particular society has to offer, and in this particular society, your faith is defined by things like Christianity or Muslim or some other faiths, and in Nigeria it's pretty much the same thing. We also have the traditional religions. However, all the religions, as far as we're concerned, share a common flaw, and that is they are not based on evidence, reality, on things which are provable. So, as we come out of religions, we want something which is a bit more real, a bit more tangible, and so we look for things which are provable, which are based on evidence, and so we tend to reject all religions. I mean, some people might say, well, I'm a Christian, in which case they reject every other religion apart from Christianity. Or they might say, I'm a Muslim, they reject every other religion apart from Islam. But we reject them all. We go one religion further in terms of rejecting religions, and we want something which is real. We believe in reality, or rather, we accept reality for what it is. We don't want to believe, because belief implies that whatever people dish
temporal.
up, that's what you got to accept and that's what you got to believe. But we want to be able to think for ourselves and to be able to weigh up whatever proposition is put in front of us and decide whether it's real or it's not real. And then if it's real and there's sufficient evidence, then we'll accept it. But we want to know things. We don't want to believe. We want to know.
Talking about that, is a question I'm going to put to all of you, because what we're doing here is to bring people to the understanding of the humanist philosophy. And to come to that, it has been a struggle, because when we talk about a condition that from as a child we've been conditioned to think this way, and there are a lot of people in it today that have struggled with certain text, certain principles, certain description of events. Even some people have struggled with time and period, dates. But yet, people will stay because it gives them comfort and hope that many people are going to be around you. I want to know, and for the listeners as well, because like Lola mentioned a little bit of snippet there, that it was a struggle. I want to know, each of you, tell me about the struggle, from the period you decided that this is not right. What was the key issue there that turns it around, that you comes to that conclusion that this religion, was it Christianity? I mean, Clive, for you?
For me, it was Christianity.
So all of you is Christianity. Right. That key moment, because like I said, we struggle. I've struggled with a lot of things as a child. I've been asking a lot of questions that has not been answered. But that key moment when you think to yourself, well, this is it.
Well, you have to...
And how you struggled, because we talk about atheism as well. That was a point as well that a lot of people reject, just the idea, the philosophy of it. And how do you struggle with all of that to be able to now speak in confidence of what you now know of and sure about?
Well, you have to understand that it's usually, for most people, it's not a one flash moment, There's no road from to Damascus type of experience, a kind of Damascene flash. What tends to happen is you're assailed with doubts, and you want questions. You want answers to those questions which are troubling you. And in my case, as I said, I was a Christian. I was in the Roman Catholic tradition, actually. I was what you call a Eucharistic minister in the Roman Catholic Church. And when I started having my doubts, I did everything. I was saying things like, well, if, this particular thing didn't quite agree with what we've been told and the biblical stories and so on and so forth, then maybe it's because God wanted it to be done in that particular way. I mean, so in the case of how did stuff get here, when, how did all the suns and the moons and stars and planets, how did they all get here? Well, the story is that they were all made by God. But in fact, there's a perfectly rational, natural explanation. And, you can go and check it out for yourself, how those things are done. Starting with scientific explanations from the Big Bang and going on from there. How did all these living creatures that we see around us, how did they all get here? So again, there's all sorts of natural, rational explanations, especially with Charles Darwin's evolutions by means of natural selection. And we can go on to so many things. How did the Earth get to be the way it is now? Was it made by a deity, or did it come about because of plate tectonics and other natural natural processes? Again, plate tectonics wins. You can look at the evidence and see that this is how these things come about. But as I said, it didn't all happen in a flash. It took me several years of looking into it.
Sorry, were you a staunch churchgoer?
Yes, as I said, I was very, very much involved in the church. I was a Eucharistic minister in the Roman Catholic Church, so that means I would read readings in church services, or I would go out to the congregation. If somebody was not feeling well, I'd go to their house and I'd do a service for them in their house and give them the Eucharist, the body and blood of Christ, in their house. So I was a very, very committed member of the Roman Catholic Church.
How long?
All my life, until I got to the stage where all these questions started coming in. So anyway, it got to a stage where I just had to decide, am I going to continue believing the religious narrative, or am I going to go with the rational scientific narrative? And I went with the rational scientific narrative because there's evidence there. You can prove everything. You can prove virtually nothing on the religious narrative side. Nothing. You can't prove it. You can believe it if you like, but you can't prove it. So that was how I ended up coming out of it. And of course, at the time I came out, I thought I was the only one, which is something which happens to a lot of people. They don't, it's a confusing time. You think you're the only person. But, then I got to know that there were other groups of people, non-believers, like atheists and humanists and free thinkers and
so you didn't
skeptics.
You didn't know that before?
I didn't. It was I thought I was the only one. It was a very strange.
So
time
how the Catholic Church and the members dealt with you? How was that experience?
I don't want to put them down, because
no, you're speaking your now knowledge.
That's it.
Yeah.
Some of them, were friends. Well, we were friends, when I was in the church. But after I'd left, I made it clear that I was leaving. Then, if I was walking down the road and there was another member of the congregation coming towards me, they would cross the road. They would go to the other side. So
how did they view you, or how they? The view of of you.
Well, the view is of somebody who is no longer a believer. Is that, in fact, it's not that you just stop believing in God and that's it. Far from it. They now think that you believe in devils and all sorts of spirits which have a negative purpose and influence in this world. So it's. And of course, they want to keep themselves as far away from you as possible. So they don't want you talking to children, because obviously they don't want whatever has influenced you and to influence them and to kind of, it's like a coronavirus of religion. They want to keep you away.
So you've been quarantined and put to a segregation unit.
Exactly.
Audrey, what about you? This is, Clive just said, as a male and as a man, You know, the way you can understand it, that is very, very, it's very disgraceful because it makes you feel so depressed. It makes you feel like you're nobody, especially when this is your conviction, this is your knowledge now. And for a man to be feeling like all of these years put into something, for him to now think for himself, that is a problem. How is it for you? I mean, how was it? Were you a church goer? Were you frequenting church? I mean,
As a child, I was. We were part of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, so I went to the Seventh-day Adventist Church, which anyone doesn't know, we go to church on a Saturday. We follow the Sabbath in the Old Testament. But I also went to a Church of England school, so I had to go to school. I had to go to church on a Sunday as well, which is probably why I'm confused right now. But I think when you're going through the process of questioning, you're not just questioning your religion, you're not just questioning beliefs, you're questioning your family, you're questioning the way that you've been raised, you're questioning everything that you've been told. And that's the anxiety. It's a slow death. You're losing a part of yourself. You're losing a part of your identity. And when you start to have to unravel that and deal with the consequences of that, that's when you start to feel that you're losing your mind. And I think there isn't a eureka moment. It's a slow death, a death of who you used to be. And how then do you rebuild yourself to the new you, to the new non-believing you? And how do you then reconcile that with the family that you've grown up with, that you've loved, that have loved you and have raised you? How do you then deal with all of those things? And our members struggle with all of that a lot of the time. Some people have been kicked out of their house. Some people don't speak to their family. Some people pretend, so they go to church on Sunday and come to us on a Saturday. So there's a whole bunch of people out there that are struggling daily with this kind of double life that they're having to lead. So when you talk about this eureka moment, there is no eureka moment. It's a slow, painful death of who you used to be. And until you can, so what we try to do as a humanist group is try to give people a path, that there is life after non-belief. There is a space for you to be yourself, and that it doesn't mean the end of you, and you can still be somebody, and you can still be good. The idea that religion is good and that without it you are not good, which is what religion then teaches us, are the things that we then have to deal with, as to say that you are good. And what does goodness mean? And how do you live your life as a good person in this planet, in this earth, in Britain? And how do you interact with people on a daily basis? And those are the kind of things that we as a group try to instill in people and try to bring out in people.
Yeah, I hear that conflict of fear. You know, fear plays a lot of role here. You know, like what you said, Clive, about they stopped you from, even the members, if you're walking on this side, they cross on that side. It's about fear of them really getting to know things that they've said not to know.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
So it's a conflict. It's not you personally they're afraid of. They're afraid of to hear something that will make them think, because, you know, religion don't allow you to think on behalf of yourself. It's through Jesus Christ or through another person or individual. So that idea now that you can able to think for yourself is very problematic. Lola, you mentioned earlier on that, you know, you faced a lot of discrimination, you know, isolation.
Preach at Lusham and other places where you find especially Africans. So I was very, very religious.
What was the turning point?
Like Audrey and Clive have said, it's always a journey. And I think my journey lasted about 20 years. It's from, my family, like Audrey's, it's so surprising how much we have in common. I was also raised as an Adventist.
Okay.
And when I was growing up, we lived in the Adventist community. My parents were teachers, so we had the Seventh-day Adventist school. So that's where I grew up until I was about 10. And then we had a change of regime at a point in Nigeria, and that regime stopped, religion from being in control of education. So all the hospitals, all religions, all schools under religion were taken away and given to the government. So that was the first time I had to leave the Adventist community. So we were thrown into the world, so to say. And then I started looking at people. I'm thinking, why is it? What will happen to Muslims? They seem so nice. Why were they teaching us that we were the only good thing? You know, we're the only we're the, you know, we are correct. Everyone is going to hell. So that was my first questioning. And then I didn't stop. And when I was about 16, 18, I wanted to learn about other religions. I looked into Buddhism. I looked into everything. I read Quran. So even when I've read, you know, I was wondering why is Christianity the only way? But I still submitted to it because that's my family, my friends, everyone. And if there was a point when I realized there was a point and there was a day and my dad was with me, and my dad being a church elder, you know, he also liked astronomy.
Okay.
And then it was pressuring him. If he knew what that thing would do, maybe it would have left me alone. So it made me to be watching documentaries with him. And I was getting the understanding that, okay, this makes more sense than the talking snakes in the Bible and all that, you know. But now I think Clive was saying about rejecting all religions. You know, there are different aspects to religion. The part that I reject in religion will be the superstitious religion. I don't reject certain rituals. For example, the traditional, you know, I go on a lot about, you know, the Yoruba traditional beliefs that are, for me, are more humanistic and more advanced than Islam and Christianity. So I will participate. And I remember Wole Soyinka, he came to England and gave a talk at the, I think, SOAS. We can still embrace that part of us. We don't need to, you know, we don't need to accept this, you know, the superstitious side. But there are a lot of things in, you know, religion, music, dancing, costumes. There is a lot, you know, in our culture that we can carry on, even as humanists.
I think that's a very good point. What we're going to do, we're going to take a music break, and we'll come back and look into the practices of your association of Black Humanists. I think what Lola said about the tradition, the dancing, do you guys bring some aspect of Christianity, Islam, in terms of how you practice, your philosophy? And when you meet, what do you do? We're going to learn more about that. You're listening to the Association of Black Humanists here on Verity Radio. Audrey, Clive, and Lola. My name is Freestyle. And let's take a musical break. I think this is from... oh, yeah. Champagne King, isn't that right? The sounds of Michael Jackson. Always sounding so good, isn't it? We've got a really full studio here today, which is very, very beautiful. I love it. Talking to the Association of Black Humanist Group. Clive, Audrey, and Lola. Okay, yeah. Well, we're back on now, and, you know, Michael, a percussionist, he's here from the Big Time Drum Production. Well, Audrey here now, I was speaking to the Association of Black Humanists, Clive, Audrey, and Lola, and they've been giving us a backdrop of the organization when they came to be part of the Humanist Association, and also the struggle that they went through individually from parents, from families, and from their respective denominations. So what we now want to know now is about what you do, what the Association of Black Humanists, what do you do? So churches have their practices. You know, people get married and people die and people celebrate like child's naming ceremony and all of these things. How do you go about that?
up that particular aspect because sitting here, myself and Audrey, we are what we call celebrants in the humanist movement. So you can, just because you left church doesn't mean you're not going to need all those kind of things at some point in your life, you know, whether it's a naming, a marriage, or a funeral, you know. So I am a funeral celebrant and I conduct funerals. And Audrey is a wedding celebrant and she's able to conduct weddings and marriages, you know. But we also have we also have celebrants for namings, so we're able to cover those key points in people's lives. You know, it's part of what we do. In terms of what we do on a week-to-week basis, because obviously those are key points in your life, but it doesn't necessarily happen every week. We try and recreate, if you like, the community feel that churches tend to have. If there's one thing which is good about churches, is that they give you that sense of community. And so we try to give people a sense of community, and so that they feel that they belong to a community. And when we have an event, we have an event at least once a month. At the end of it, people are so comfortable and they're so...
Do you have a building? Do you meet in a particular building? Or
Yes, in fact, we have a place in Bethnal Green where we meet up. Our particular group meets up in Bethnal Green. Other groups have their own buildings, but we have our group events in a place called Common House in Bethnal Green, and so we meet there. And as I said, we have different events. The theme of each event is slightly different, but at the end of it, people feel very comfortable, and you know, you virtually have to drive them out, you know, because they just want to stay and to continue that community feel, you know. So
yeah, tell us about the ritual. So you conduct is it funerals?
yeah, I'm a
Right.
funeral celebrant. Yes.
Right. I mean, we all, well, I won't say we all, but people who have a Christian have been to some kind of funeral. And tell us about the service. How, and because a lot of times when they pray, it's in the name of Jesus Christ, people say Amen. How do you go about your process?
Yes, in fact, your introduction there has put your finger on the weakness of the religious celebrations, which is that it's more or less just giving over to, as if it's a church service. I mean, when my father died, for example, all you heard was, you know, let's pray to the Lord Jesus and let's do this and let's do that. And it was more or less a religious service. Whereas when you come to a humanist service, it's focused on the individual. It's a celebration of that person's life. And, you know, we talk about what that person did. We talk about how he grew up and what he meant to his friends, to his families, the kind of things he enjoyed, and it's really looking at that person's life. So by the end of that celebration, by the end of that ceremony, somebody who doesn't know that person feels as if they've really found something out about that person. And it's a beautiful service.
Yeah.
And it's each one, of course, because you're doing it along those lines, is very, very personal. It's very...
I mean, I'm loving this already, you know. I mean, it's not like I want to die tomorrow to experience this. However, I don't go to church, but I'm listening right now. I'm not a humanist, but I like the idea that all my accolade or experiences been read, you know. Would you guys take up that responsibility for somebody who don't believe at all, who is not really part, just like people who don't go to church, but when they die, they get a service held in churches. So somebody who don't believe at all, not part of the group, would they say, well, yeah, I want this to be conducted? Would you take up that?
Yes, because our sort of ceremonies are meant to be non-religious. So provided you don't expect us to start, you know, reading great big bits out of Bibles or holy texts and this and that, or praying or, you know, chanting religious music, provided you don't want that. If you want that, then go to a religious person.
Okay.
But
Now, I didn't tell my family this, but I've already written to your association. Say, well, this is what I want when I die. But now you're telling them, no, well, Freestyle said this is what he wanted. Now, if my family said, no, well, we're Christian, we want to pray, we want to conduct a Christian ceremony within the same funeral, well, how would you guys deal with that?
yeah, well, what will happen there is that most of the service, most of the ceremony would be non-religious. But if you want to bring in a religious element because your family feels that without that particular little gem in there, the ceremony is not complete, and the family can't do without it, then of course we'd accommodate them and let them do it. But what we would do is I would say, okay, here is, I don't know, Bob or Fred, who will now lead us in this particular thing. It could be a song, or it could be a reading, or whatever it is. I wouldn't read it myself, but I would say, okay, Fred, come in and do it.
Right.
And so, yeah, it helps to accommodate people who want a little bit of religion in there. Come what may,
Yeah.
they've got to have a little bit of religion.
Yeah. Okay. Lola, I mean, Clive just mentioned there about the music and things like that, the singing. When it comes to wedding, because that's what you takes care of, you conduct, is there any sort of music? And what kind of music?
Weddings are personal. Weddings are about the couple. All of the weddings that I conduct are about what the couple want. So we do all kinds of things. I've done a hand binding. I've done a quake, which is a kind of Scottish love cup exchange, things like that. So the beauty of a humanist wedding, of a non-religious wedding, is it's about what couples want. So if they want music, and we've had Beatles singing the songs along with the Beatles, I've had a bit of Adele, because it then opens up and it then represents who you are and who you are as a couple and how you've come together, and you're able to tell your story. So music, yes, absolutely. We usually have readings, and not just, from the Bible, but we've had nishi and comical readings, a bit of, what's that, I can't remember her name, not Jane Eyre, do you know what I mean, the northern one. People read whatever they want because it's about representing who they are.
The actual ceremony, because wedding is all about the sharing of the ring, which is more traditional. I'm not sure whether it's Christian tradition or something like that. But you just mentioned the sharing of cups. Is that part of, what is the ceremony entails for humanist wedding?
A humanist ceremony, most couples exchange rings, okay? Because there's an element of people wanting to do what they understand and what they know. So even though there isn't because exchanging of rings isn't a religious thing, it's a symbolic act. It's an act of people coming together and exchanging something that says, I am now part of you.
A cup and a plate, probably?
Say that again?
A cup and a plate?
A cup and a plate. You can exchange whatever you want. Some people exchange necklaces. Some people exchange bracelets. So the exchange, the object that you exchange is what represents you. So at the moment, it's usually traditionally rings, but it doesn't have to be. So you can exchange rings, you can hand bind and have ribbons that you then can put into a frame and put onto your wall. It opens up a whole world.
What's the most funniest exchange you've witnessed?
I haven't witnessed anything funny. It's just the kind of things that, because those moments are important. There's a lot of solemnity about them. People want the gravitas. Although when you're telling people stories, and I have had to tell people that I'm doing one now where they're having to tell them that they met on the internet, although they've lied to their family. So now I'm going to have to do the big reveal that actually they met on the internet and not in some club. So there'll be this moment when everyone's going to, So there's this kind of thing where you can be yourself. They are now feeling comfortable enough to say, actually, Audrey, just tell them how we met. We met slide right, whatever. That's how we met, and they're prepared to be open. You couldn't do that in a religious ceremony. So there is these things of revealing and being yourself within that ceremony. And that's how you're going to start your life, as a couple coming together as yourself.
Exactly. What I'm hearing there, is that, both the funeral and the wedding, is that you get more out of the person involved compared to when you've been to, say, Christian funeral, where it's all about the church. unless the minister or the reverend goes out to preach, he will talk a little bit about the person, but mostly it's about heaven and all of these beautiful things that, is perceived. But what I'm hearing here is that, in both occasions, like the people who are attending, say somebody like myself who don't know anything about the Humanist Association and what they do, would love that. And I've just had something about funeral just now. I think I loved it because you get to hear about the person, his life, throughout. I mean, I went to one of a Nigerian that passed away last year. Babadi Sosi Wallace. He was a percussionist as well. And it's not a humanist sort of celebration, but it was held in church, but he was saying it was a non-kind of religious sort of funeral. It was more like a traditional funeral. And also because he's a man that is a multi sort of facet kind of person. So you have a Christian prayer and you have the Muslim prayer by his graveside. And I think that's really phenomenal, to have all the combined sort of element there, When it comes to the vow, is it different from the one that is read in church? The oath. Is it different from the one taken in church?
Most couples write their own vows because it's their marriage. They're setting up how they're going to live together. So they can be, very, I will love you forever, you'll be a part of my life. Or they can be, I will pick up your socks if you throw them on the floor. They can be whatever because it's about that couple. So when, people always ask me, what am I going to say in the vows? And I said, tell him, tell her, tell your partner what it is that you are going to do as part of this relationship. What promises are you going to make? And they're ones that you can make and that you can keep. They're not some far off, someone else has written them that you just have to repeat. They come from you. They come from where you want to be within your relationship. They set the foundation for how you're going to live as a couple.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think that's the beauty of what I like about weddings is that I'm sitting down there and I'm a nosy person and I love finding out people's business. My mother used to call me fast. So I sit down there and I find out about people's life, how they met, what they do, where they travel to, what they like to eat. And then I create a ceremony that represents that.
Right. And how long is that ceremony?
It's as long as you want it. It's how long as a piece of string. Some people want it short. I want 15 minutes, say, and other people, you go on 2 hours later, you're still there. Because it's about the couple. They design it. We sit down there and we craft it together. They were part of the whole process.
Have you had ceremony held in people's home?
I have been to one in someone's home. When I was training, I did one in someone's home. They can be held anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's, again, it represents where you want to do it, or, you know what I mean? I've had them. We've got in an old broken down church. It's an almshouse. No plaster on the wall, nothing in there, but a few candles, a bit of ribbon. It looks beautiful. So I've been in a field in St Albans, just standing in a field, a bit of grass, people. That's all you need. When you're looking at someone's life, what you need are your friends and your family to see you together. And you need a bride and a groom, or a groom and a groom, and a bride and a bride. You need a couple. That's what you need. There isn't anything else that you need when you're starting your life together. You need each other, a few friends to help you along the way, and a message that you're actually going to commit to each other, and you want to do that in public. And that's all a wedding is.
There's a text just came in here from Lorna. It says, this is very interesting. It's similar to what I have always thought. If people put being human and function with love before religion or cults and systematic institutions, systems, then we will all be in a better place. Can your guest please give info about of their website and meetings or events they may be doing? That's from Lorna.
We meet once a month, the last Saturday in every month. We're on Meetup, so if you want to register with us, there's Association of Black Humanists. We're on Meetup. We advertise all our events on there. Our next meeting is on the 29th of this month. We meet from 4 till 6. Yeah, and we come together as Clive was saying. It's a celebration. It's we usually have a speaker or we put on something ourselves, and we kind of just talk about the things that are important to us. So a few of our events that we've done in the past, we've talked about FGM, we've talked about climate change. A recent one we looked at veganism, but we look at them from the African perspective. So if we're looking at veganism, how is climate change affecting Africa? You know what I mean? We've got floods happening in Wales and everyone's in panic. But floods have been going on in Africa for a long time. Mozambique was underwater just a while ago. There's been earthquakes going on. And until it's on the Western doorstep, people aren't really paying attention. So when they were happening in Africa, it was like, okay, look at these poor people. They're on their roof. But let's move on to something else. So we have to think about how are these things going to affect us as Africans. And we're talking about Africa. We're talking about the diaspora. So how are we affected by these things? So we talk about climate change, we talk about FGM, we talk about sex workers, we talk about all the things that affect us, not just as Africans, as human beings. We're here, we're in Europe, we're living our lives, and how are we going to do that? And so we take all those different topics and we look at them and we analyze them and we discuss them, and we do that once a month, and anybody is welcome to come along as long as you want to participate. We don't like people sitting in the corner. We want people to talk and be a part of us as humanists.
What about the legal aspect of things? I mean, in terms of wedding, is it legally accepted, recognized
We're still
here in the
working
UK?
on Boris. We had Theresa May in before, and because she was a reverend's daughter, she was reluctant. The Humanist UK have been working with the government for a very long time now. They've got a humanist working group working with various MPs. We've got a lot of support, but we've had Brexit and a whole range of things have been put on hold. So at the moment, a humanist wedding isn't legal. It is legal in Northern Ireland and in Scotland. You can have them as a legal thing. So we're still working on it. We're hoping that Boris will come through for us, as you know, as a diversion. He might sort of grant us that. Quakers and you know Jewish rabbis, they can do that. So we're looking at the same kind of thing. So at the moment, it isn't a legal thing. You would have to do your registry office thing first and then create a ceremony. And most people are willing to do that. But we're working on it. Watch the space. It's happening.
Okay. I mean, for people who are really interested, I mean, you know, we'll give out the information again about your meeting and website and so on. Lola, what are the age range for somebody to join the Association of Black Humanists?
There is no age in trade. I think we have some in their late teens, and then we are diverse in terms of age. I have met a few teenagers who don't. I'm always mindful when I'm dealing with young people because it's a time for them to explore. So I do meet a lot of young people between 16 and 19 that are questioning their religion and wanting to know. They are looking for alternatives. But personally, I don't know. I'm reluctant about it, about them. You know, I want them to explore more, and so that if they are joining us, because there is a lot at stake. For example, students, some they still rely on their parents, you know, for funding. So I don't encourage young. Yeah, so I don't enjoy. I'm weary of encouraging. I think anyone. I don't know. Maybe until they're 18.
I think it's about whether people are self-sufficient, and some of our members who are still living in their parents' home, their parents are very religious, coming to our groups or being part of our groups has consequences for them. So we try to make sure that people are financially in a position to leave their home, that they can, you know, because it can cause a lot of conflict and people can become homeless.
Yeah.
And we are not in an organisation that can find people a home or things like that. We don't have that. So we have to make people aware that, you know what I mean, you need to think about this. We'll support you. We'll be here. But you don't have to come out and start leaving home and all those kinds of things.
Right. Okay. Well, we've had my next guest is here, Michael, and a percussionist, and He's going to join this conversation, and also we're going to have a little time after we've learned more from the humanists, because I think it's a very, very interesting topic, and I'm sure we've learned just a little bit more by listening to them. Mike, you're here.
Yes, I am.
Welcome to Feferi
Thank
Radio.
you very much for having me.
Yes, I know we're going to be talking about what you do, but
Yes.
I'm sure that.
But I would like to chime in on two questions.
I can see that. Yes, so go ahead.
Yes. So my question to this group, and anyone can answer this question, is: so I'm listening to the whole idea of the humanists, in which I absolutely love it, right? And so, just as a devil's advocate kind of question, why isn't the humanist movement, in terms of the weddings and the funerals, are not as popular as the religious movements, or shall we say, the religious practices that would normally say, okay, if we're going to have a funeral, okay, this is the normal way. So what I'm asking is, why isn't it part of the norm? So, for example, if I go to a funeral director's home, right, that should be one of the options to say, you can either do a Christian wedding, a humanist wedding, a whatever, a Baptist funeral, whatever wedding, but the whole idea is, how come this is not part of the norm, is what I'm asking, as to play devil's advocate.
Well, in the first instance, you have to look at where we live. We live in this society which is fundamentally religious at its core, and it's been that way for hundreds and hundreds of years, if not thousands. So everything that is done with that religious aspect going on. And it's as if that is the normal thing, that is the standard thing, and anything else is exotic and strange and weird, So that is the thing that we're up against. But things are moving, even though they're moving slowly, like Audrey was explaining about going to disturb Boris and get him to change things regarding the legality of humanist weddings. So things are changing. And the society itself is changing. In 2019, for the first time, the non-religious people were the majority in this country compared to religious people. So,
can I, sorry for interrupting.
That's all right.
I just want to explain why you are asking, why is it not like widely known? This alternative, maybe humanist wedding or humanist funeral. The thing is, humanism, I think our focus, our association, our focus is, how can you as a black person, how can you live your life not being guided by religions that have been forced on us? For example, Christianity. Is there a life outside that mental slavery of Christianity? And that's what we're about. People don't know yet. It is shocking. Like you're saying, you haven't heard about us. We are new. Whereas we say Africa is the cradle of humanism. We started, we are the cradle of civilization. We started the human race. We are rational people. We don't need, we are rational people. It takes rationality, being able to reason, for us to survive as a species. So it needs to be out there that before Christianity, before Islam, which were opposed on you, there is humanism. Mm-hmm. We were all humanists first. Mm-hmm. When a child is born, a child doesn't have religion. It is the parent and the society that force upon that child religion.
Well, the reason why I'm asking this question, right? Because I myself, as a professional drummer of 30-something plus years, right, I have done loads of weddings of all sorts and played of, all sorts of funerals, okay? And just recently, Thursday, I played for a funeral. And just to tie into what I'm trying to talk about here is that, it was interesting because with what you were saying, right? In the funeral, though it was held at a church and, there was a pastor and everything, but 90% of what the funeral was about was more so to do with the story of the person and everything to do with the person and nothing to do with religion. As a matter of fact, this person who passed away wasn't necessarily a church-going person, which was interesting to hear that. And that ties into what you were saying about sometimes with family, what their wishes and what the person's wishes can be two separate things, and that's fine. But so this is why I'm asking that question, because it would seem to me that that option would be just as popular, or if not more so, because, for example, you have people who are, let's say, they're just into goth, right? And goth is a kind of dark movement. And so a humanist movement would be perfect for them if they were to get married or if they were to have a funeral. And that's why in my mind I'm like, why is it not
I think
popular just for the reasons that you're saying? You see what I mean?
Yeah.
I think. Sorry, Audrey, you wanna
I was going to
address
say,
that?
I think the thing is, the humanist movement or the humanist thinking is playing catch up. So what we have is people believe, not even if they don't believe, there's a system in place that's simple, it's ready, it's up and running, it's IKEA, it's flat packed, ready to go.
Yeah.
So when you go to a funeral directors, they know the church, it's all flat packed, it's all ready, it's so, you know what I mean, ready to go. Whereas with humanism, you know what I mean, you've got to put it together. And some funeral directors and all of those kind of things, they ain't got time to worry about humanists. If they ring up one humanist and they ain't ready, they go straight to the church. And it's a way of thinking. And so what we need to do is that people need to ask for it, but people don't know about it, so they don't ask for it. And also, when humanists don't have buildings, so there isn't a place that you can go and say, I'm going to have my funeral, my wedding in this space. Whereas a church, they are two a penny around. And there's a space where people can go. And humanists don't have that. So we're always on the kind of, we're like magpies. We're borrowing spaces. We're turning up in people's spaces. So whereas the church has got these buildings that are ready to go, there's a system already set up in place. Humanism doesn't have that yet. We're playing catch up. So although in our minds we are making changes, the facilities that we need aren't in place yet. We don't have buildings.
But if you're saying about facilities, doesn't that, in a sense, tie in to the fact that humanism is not, unlike with religion where, you go to a church, humanism is practically everywhere. In other words, humanism is right here. You see what I'm saying? So just like we're having this conversation, this is humanism, if you want to call it humanism, right? So and also that goes into what I was saying with, like, for example, with a lot of the weddings I've played for, right? You'd be surprised to find out that a lot of those weddings are not actually at a church because of the fact that a lot of couples, when they're making their weddings personal, they want to make it so that it represents who they are first, right? Now, if it just so happens to be at the church, that's fine. But you'd be surprised to find out that a lot of the weddings I've played for are never at a church. It's always, like, for example, at a beach, at a park. It could be at a club. It could be somewhere at, that you would never even think of. It could be at a plane. It could be anywhere. You see what I mean?
I think what it also said that it's about who conducts the wedding and how that
Right.
becomes legal.
Right.
And so, as a humanist celebrant, I do not have the authority given by the state to say that you are legally married. So when you're looking at the spaces that are available and who's conducting those weddings, you'll find that the person who's conducting those weddings has the legal recognition, and that's the difference. So you can conduct weddings now in various places, but it's about who's conducting those weddings.
To become legal.
at the moment, humanist celebrants are not legally recognized as being able to conduct a wedding that then becomes legal. So people are doing things, but who's conducting those weddings are the people. It's still the priest, it's still the registrars that are going out and doing those things. And we are not registrars; we're not recognized as such, and that's the disparity.
So,
Yeah.
question on this. So, if you were to be a registrar, right, would it be something where you would have to follow certain guidelines, or it's just being able to say, I can legally officiate this wedding without necessarily having to follow some sort of guideline that says you need to say this, with the exception of saying, by the power invested in me in the state or in the land of whatever, I now pronounce you whatever.
There's legal passages, and I'm not familiar with them at the moment, but there are legal things. What makes a wedding legal is who conducts it, and there are certain things that need to be said. In humanist weddings, we don't have anything that we have to say. In all legal weddings, there was passages that have to be recognised by the state that actually say makes it a legal wedding, and we don't have that at the moment within humanists. So those are the disparities that we have.
Mm-hmm. Well, legally, you have to say things like, does anybody have any reasons why this wedding shouldn't go ahead? Mm-hmm. And if, somebody says, I do, and they say, I do about 2 or 3 times, then legally that wedding has to be cancelled. So we have to make sure when the whole thing is legalized in terms of humanist weddings, that they have to say those bits and pieces.
You have to abide by those.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. Looking at it, I think Michael might be really interested by the sound of it, and I will not take myself out of that as well. And this is another question from 0K. She said, "Can I believe in an African tradition and still be an humanist?"
Yeah, absolutely. It's to accept that, there's something called objective reality, and that we want to try and find out as much as we can. So we're kind of educating ourselves as well. So the process of education never stops, But so there is that element. But apart from that, if you want to go along that line of things, and you also want to be spiritual in some sense of African spirituality or any other form of spirituality, then we are very accommodating in that sense. But if somebody, or rather, if you try and impose those spirituality concerns or beliefs or whatever,
right,
then you have to be ready to get some pushback because
right.
we're not
so
about that.
Can one have their cake and eat it? What I mean by that is that, well, yeah, I'm a Christian, even though I don't go to church, but somehow I subscribe to some notions of the church. But I like the sound of the humanist philosophy. Can I be both?
Yeah, as I said just now, it's entirely possible to be both. I mean, when we were called London Black Atheists, for instance, we used to say as a joke that you don't have to be a Londoner, you don't have to be black, and you don't even have to be atheist to be in London Black Atheists. But as long as you support what we stand for, as long as you support what we are trying to achieve, then yes, you could be in our organization and still do some of this.
For me, I don't think you have to support anything. I think we are a forum for exploration. I'm going to talk about this traditional, because there are some black people, Africans, continental Africans or black people around that believe in the worshipping of the ancestry. And lately, it's occurred to me that anything that we do as black people is seen as barbaric, or and it occurred to me that in this part of the world, they worship their ancestors, but they do it in a way that we think is not worshiping of ancestors. The worshiping of ancestors is remembrance. They do all this war veterans, praising them and honoring them.
Mm-hmm.
Although they are wearing suit and this uniform, and sometimes you have Prince Charles there,
Mm-hmm.
then it gives it what is not. It's
The
not
ordinance.
better than when we dance
Mm-hmm.
and we do things our own way and worshiping our ancestors.
Mm.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
So you are welcome. You are
Okay.
welcome to Association of Black Humanists.
Also, the conversation about morality, I think, is one that a lot of people find the churches or religions to despair. Because, it's like people tend to do the right thing, and then they will see the members or the man in front of them, the pastor, not doing the right thing when it comes to morality. How does that really, the issue of morality, is kind of dealt with in terms of the human, in the humanist context?
Well, in the first instance, we don't put ourselves forward as being some kind of moral force or morality police, or have guidelines which, control people. People tend to do good, or to do what is not so good, and if you do good things, then hopefully you'll get rewarded for it, and if you do bad things, you'll get punished for it by the law of that particular country or state or wherever it is you happen to live. So we don't pretend that we have some kind of moral superiority the way that religions tend to do. And then, of course, as they're all human, same as anybody else, they fall short of that moral superiority which they claim, but which they don't actually possess. So this is when you hear stories about, abusing women or young children or what have you. So in other words, I'm not saying things can't happen in a humanist context, but hopefully you will get caught and punished if you do anything bad.
What,
So-
within the humanist context, I mean association, is that what you're saying?
You'll be punished according to the laws of that particular country or state or region or whatever, wherever you happen to be. And if I saw anything like that going on, I would myself report it, and hopefully whoever is doing it will get
You are talking about crime.
Yeah, I was
crime or any other thing.
I think when we're talking about morality, we need to think. I mean, there is the criminal aspect of it, but there's also our personal responsibility. As humanists, we know that we have our own individual thoughts, but we also have a personal responsibility to our neighbours, to our friends, to our community, to our planet, to our country. We have those responsibilities, and so what we're looking at in terms of doing no harm. If we harm somebody, we are harming our community, we are harming everybody else around us. So we look at climate change at the moment, we've harmed our planet. We have responsibilities. And to say that we don't believe in God doesn't relieve us of the responsibility of our neighbours. We still have to be acting as a community. And as African people, we know that. We know that we need to be responsible. It takes a village to raise a child. We know that our friends, children, our family, our uncles are all responsible for us. And when we lose that idea that we are responsible for each other, that's when things break down in our communities. And humanism isn't devoid of that. That's when we have to take responsibility, because we can't leave it to God. We have to do it ourselves.
Another thing is religion. I'm talking now about Abrahamic religion. They have this idea that when you go to church or go to mosque, that you are learning morality. I have to say, you just need to read the Bible very well and read the Quran very well. I truly believe that those books, they should be, with a collection of maybe Nazi Hitler's manifesto.
Yeah.
What morality do you get out of the Bible? You just we need to question the God in the Bible. The God that supported slavery, the God that believed in subjugation of women. It takes a lot to be able to see the Bible for exactly what it is. You know what? Christianity is about Jesus coming back again. What is Jesus coming back to do? To kill a lot of people, billions of people. That's what Jesus is coming back for.
Just
So
like
what is
his,
moral about that? That is this is what we, the person that we are basing our life on, the compass, just wants to kill humanity and take some home to heaven.
But let me ask you this. Now, as far as my understanding of your last statement of Jesus is coming back to kill people. Now, my understanding is it's not so much coming back to kill, but he's just, coming back to take out the people in the eyes of the beliefs of the bad people and let the good ones stay, right? That's just my
Well, I think
take on it. Right?
no, you're right.
Without getting too deep.
Yeah,
right?
but the point that she's making,
Right.
it doesn't matter whether it's good
Yeah,
people
yeah,
or
yeah.
bad people. The idea is
Yeah.
that the issue of morality there is coming to kill. And
Yes,
also he said,
yes,
thou shalt not
absolutely,
kill. But it is okay.
Right.
Jesus coming, expect the good one, expect the bad one to die.
Correct.
But
And so going along this whole point, and this goes for any three of you. Okay, my question is there any moral values that are upheld within the humanist context that may differ from, let's say, religious or any other beliefs that are out there? Can you elaborate on that?
well, just to finish off what Lola was saying about Jesus coming back, we already have some evidence in the Bible as to how God goes about these things. In the Noah story, everybody was drowned except for one family and Noah and his family, and it didn't matter whether you were a good person or a bad person. I mean, at any time, at any one moment, there must be thousands or millions of women who are pregnant with young children who have committed no sin whatsoever in their stomach, and they were all drowned. So we know that God is not too he's not too picky who He gets to save. So the morality of the Bible is very, very questionable, and
And same
well,
with the Quran.
exactly. So we're so happy that we don't base our morality
Right.
on that.
Well, to your point, by the way, I think we can all agree, including yourself and everybody in this room, actually, that we all know and understand that the Bible, the Quran, any one of these books, and I'm putting in quotation marks for those that can't see what I'm doing, that it's all man-made, and because it's man-made, really on the bigger level of it, it's really subjective in terms of what is your beliefs, what is your morals, what is your values, that says to you, based upon what I'm reading and my perception and things like that, this is the answer that I'm getting, or this is what's letting me know this is what makes sense to me, right? And so because of that, that's why I kind of asked the question about, is the morals of the humanist movement, is there anything that differs from the books per se,
Audrey.
or is it more just about perception, like
Yeah.
like what I'm
I would
saying?
like you to talk about the Ubuntu idea, and I think I am. So those.
The Ubuntu is the philosophy of I am because we are. So when as I said, we were talking about the community. We cannot exist without being part of something. Yeah. So when we're looking at religion itself, regardless of what the name of your religion is, it's about an in-group and an out-group. Humanism doesn't deal with in-groups and out-groups. We recognize that people are different, and there are going to be some people that are going to do things and that are going to be for the greater good, and there are going to be some people who aren't, and we have to work out how we're going to deal with those people. So, but there isn't an in-group, so we're not going to look at LGBT and say, well, this particular group is an out-group. We're not going to look at somebody else and say that children are okay to be brutalized because they're children.
Right.
We're not going to look at women and say that because you're female, we can treat you in this way. So there are things within religion that are discriminatory, things that we can't do legally. Yeah, that as a community we have decided how we're going to live our lives, but somehow religion gets an out and is able to discriminate when we as a
went to Africa and you told the Africans that they must all become Christians, because if they become Christians, when they die, they will go to heaven, because heaven is a wonderful place. Ladies and gentlemen, if heaven was such a good place, do you think white people will tell black people about it? So we came to England with all the expectations of being equal. Here we are in the mother country. The white man can't come to terms with it. And I'll tell you something, as I've said before. If you English people, not white people, if you're not English, you're welcome to stay in England. If you're English and you don't like the way we are running England, please leave.
Completely unacceptable, but it was legal. And but our morality develops, and maybe a bit late in the day, but they found out that you shouldn't really have black people as slaves, and LGBT people could marry if they want to. You know, it's just our morality develops. Whereas the morality which tends to be in the so-called holy books, again, I'm using your quotation marks, if you don't mind, it tends to be very, very fixed. It's completely
Absolutely.
fixed, and you can't change it. And if you even want to question it, then, you know, there's something wrong with you. You are an apostate or whatever. So, you know, let's go by our normal human way of doing things. And if we see something which is not right, we try and put it right, and we improve our morality, and we become better as a society and better as individuals.
And I think the definition of morality changes, or not changes, but it's about
It varies.
doing no harm. It's about looking at your fellow human being and not wanting to harm them. And that's the very, very sort of basic idea of morality. So that when we're looking at, when we're thinking about how we're going to deal with a particular situation, we're looking at who gets harmed if these things carry on, or if something's removed, or if something's changed. And if we're thinking about our humanity, we don't want to harm ourselves, our community, our planet, as individuals, our community. We don't want to do harm to them. We need to think about how to encourage.
As Africans as well, black people, I think we need to keep asking, before Christianity or Islam was imposed on us, were we not moral? Were we waiting around for thousands of years for Christianity to make us moral?
It is true. I think morality is about upper hand. So whoever has the upper hand create the standard, you know, because like you said, slavery was who has the upper hand to say, yeah, we can do this. And also that was repel. I mean, back then in religious times, you can marry a younger 7-year-old, you know, it was who have the upper hand. Yeah. So morality is not something that is fixed. You know, it moves and it changes. You know, so what we're getting here is that in terms of the Humanist association, there's no code that governs the ideology of morality. You just recognize that within humans there are different flaws. So therefore humans at some point will fall short. It is what you do to bring them up or to educate them that matters, right?
Absolutely correct. It's what we call the shifting moral zeitgeist. You know, you're forever improving, and you should always look to improve. You know, so some things which we think today are perfectly good and perfectly correct, and you know, it's absolutely the right way of dealing with things. Maybe 10, 20, 100 years down the line, we'll discover that, oh, maybe we should do it this way, other way, you know. So that is the way that the morality, yes, progresses.
I think what you said about what is right is about what has the upper hand. Yeah, what
Morality, yeah, is about who has the upper hand, yeah.
So I will encourage Christians, you know, black Christians and black Muslims to have an understanding that it is the religion, if you're a Christian, you are practicing a religion that oppressed your people, that conquered your people. So you are worshiping the conquerors.
I think there's this idea as well. I've heard this. I mean, and I've thought about it so much, whereby, you know, you used to hear this for a lot of, especially with black people, when we're kind of like excluded or we're outside of a particular group organization, where you just said you have to be in to make a difference. And I've been thinking about it so much that, really? Does that really work? Because how many of us have actually walked in, been part of it, and not able to make any significant change, apart from ourselves being changed to something else? So it doesn't really work that way. But what I really want to know is that, because we're talking about difficulty of coming out, difficulty of recognizing that we're human, and also difficulty of kind of understanding the philosophy of the humanist. How do you go about, if I should use the Christian term, ministered to people in order to bring them in to that human understanding?
Yeah, well, the thing is that, as I said before, we are constantly learning. You've got to be able to absorb what is being shown to you, and so there's no fixed way of going about doing it. You know, it's not like we're going to go knocking door to door and saying, you know, you should follow this particular way or follow that particular way. That's not it. The thing is, everybody is leading their life, and they come to certain points where they have to make a decision to go this way or to go that way, and then we may, if we can help, we'll give people some advice in how to, in which course of which direction to follow, and which course of actions to take.
You know,
So,
the thing is, you know, unlike religion, most people become humanist or atheist in isolation. You know, in religion, you are taught as a child. It's in your environment, on the radio, everywhere. Most atheists, in fact, all the humanist atheists that I know, not one person will say, "Oh, this person says something to me to change my mind." It's usually a lot of my humanist friends. Some of them would say they became humanists because they wanted to understand the Bible. They started reading the Bible, and that was what changed them. Some when they were like 10, 13 years old. So it's always an individual journey. And it's when you recognize that, okay, I don't believe this anymore, that you start looking around. Is there anybody else like me? So we don't convert. So there's no conversion to humanism. But we are a space for people that say, oh, I'm questioning, why should I believe that? Why is my religion saying that? And, you know, that space. Or when you leave religion entirely. So the thing that we do is just to, as Audrey has said, is just to be together. We cook food, we eat, we discuss different topics, you know. We go to see films together. We are trying to learn about history. So these are the things that we do.
Yeah.
I wanted to say that for it's about visibility. And I think a lot of people who are going to their respective mosque, church, whatever, don't realize that they don't have to do that. That they don't realize that actually they can do something different. Because in their world, in their bubble, that's what they have to do. And I think it's important that we we become more visible. And programs like this, it is about being visible. And I think in Britain, not going to church isn't a big thing. If you're a white middle class person, not going to church, no one cares. And I think when we're looking at the black community, not going to church and not believing in God is a much bigger thing. So there isn't any need within the wider community to think about it in any way and to give it visibility in any real sense. Whereas in the black community, it's a big thing. We need to be more visible. We need to be, maybe not knocking on doors. I don't think I want to be interrupting people as they're trying to eat their meals. But we need to be a voice that's out there in the public domain that says to people, listen, we're here. Yeah, we don't convert. We don't knock on doors. We're not standing at your...
Just like the, sorry if I should say this, Jolly, Jehovah Witness. That's exactly what they say. They don't convert. You know, they don't even talk to you. They're just waiting for you to come talk to them.
Yes.
You know, that's
but
great.
They're visible. And the thing about it is that non-believers are not visible. We just go about our business living our lives. And I think we need to say a little bit more loudly, a little bit clearer, I am black, I am an African, and I'm a non-believer. And that should be our mantra as we go through life. Yeah. That we are non-believers, and that because it means something within our community.
Because if I wasn't at or we wasn't at the film festival theater, I don't think this interview or this knowledge that we're gaining right now would have existed. So I understand what Audrey is saying. I think people need to see, to hear repeatedly. You know, so it's how you go. I mean, I understand what Clive is saying, that, you know, everybody will learn as you go along. You're learning all the stuff and, you know, from how many members to 700 and, you know, so I'm sure in numbers also create responsibility, you know, about shelter, you start to think about a lot more. But if we think of the idea of we're humans, and also what been going through my head as well is that I can really relate to all of the things that, you know, you were saying. However, I looked at myself. I don't want to be tagged. I just want to be me.
Right.
So
well, you know what happens is sometimes people come to our meetings, and because you know maybe they have questions or maybe they don't have questions, but they come to our meetings, and then later on, could be quite a ways later on down the road, they say, you know what, I didn't really believe I was an atheist or a humanist, you know, but having been to so many meetings, I now realize that is actually what I am, you know. So everybody's on that journey. You don't. Some people, when they're on the journey, they go from Christian, boom, straight to atheist or humanist. But some people, they go from Christian or wherever it is. They might sample a bit of Buddhism first. That one is too hot. Then they sample a bit of Islam or whatever it is. That one's too cold. And so they keep going around until they finally end up where they are.
Have you had people from the Rastafarian community over to the Humanist Association? Yeah? That's not really easy, you know. To leave Rasta, you know, I mean, it's not easy. I mean, is it to decart or whatever you call it, Rastafarianism, you know, I mean, because it's a way of life. And I mean, by what you're saying here, what I could understand, I mean, from the Association of Humanists, Black Humanists, is that it is a way of life. Because you don't really impose. There's no structure, you know. But again, like I said, numbers create structure and responsibility. So it's about how will that consistently prevail in its, you know, philosophy.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned this because don't you find that, and any one of you can answer this question individually, and I have two questions, by the way, and I want
you always have two questions.
I know, but there's a purpose
really
for it.
good.
Yeah, but there's a purpose for it, right?
Okay.
But so let me ask you this, right? Yeah. So with that said, don't you find that in a way with Rastafarian and the humanists, they have a similar movement? So it's almost as though to say you being a Rasta and you being a humanist is all in the same movement. And it's almost like saying the only difference is we just choose to paint it this way. And with humanists, we painting it this way. But the middle is we have the same message.
Right? I think, yeah.
And then the other part and then the second part to the question is, how do you feel within this conversation that we're having, which I think is just beyond excellent right now? Okay, how do you feel that tolerance is, becoming more and more accepted, in terms of how people can move forward in terms of, if they want to be a humanist, we can accept that, just like we just like everybody else wants to be accepted, whether it be, you're gay, you're straight, whether you're Christian, you're this, whatever the belief is. But the point is that, how do you feel that tolerance is probably more at a rise at this stage of the game?
I think the first point about Rasta and the humanist philosophy, I think, is different. The reason I say that is, like, the Rasta philosophy is encoded within the Old Testament, the Bible. So, it's quite completely different. And in terms of tolerance, yes, of course. I mean, now it's a word really I used to, back in the days, I used to talk about words that we can get rid of in the English language. And I think tolerance came, among those words, tolerate, because it's a word that, especially when it comes to the bourgeois or Africans, is mostly being used by others. Like, I don't like it, but I'll tolerate. I'll tolerate. And to me, it's very obscene, because what does that mean? You either want it, you either like it, you either understand it, you either know it, or you don't. In order to tolerate, it's like you're sitting on the fence. So I think in terms of, we've all been actually on the fence right now, looking, whilst everybody's looking at us sitting. I think that's the position we're in. So, yeah, you're right. It's where we draw the line, because, again, there are behaviors that, when we come to the philosophy of human, that it is not inscribed into law, but as a man or as a male, there is a certain mechanism within me. I don't know who created it, but it's there to function as a male. Now, I have the ability and the free will to say, well, I want to have a dog head. Now, am I part of the human race? Mm-hmm. Would the human race kind of tolerate me because I'm partly human? I got a human body with. So these are issues, I think, that will come and will come back again to be answered.
Mm-hmm. And what's your take?
We're talking about the Rasta. Rasta is how I came to know myself as an African. So listening to Burning Spear singing.
By the way, I was with Burning Spear. Yes.
So when I heard Christopher Columbus,
yes,
he's a young blasted liar.
And he was.
And to hear those words when I was going to a British school, and they were shocking to me. So through Rasta, I have learned about myself as an African. Mm-hmm. But the religious side of things are things that I reject. I don't reject the philosophy of a god and Haile Selassie and all of those things. But I think I think for me it's a perfect example of people, and in this case black people, trying to find their identity, which is what religion does. And the Rasta religion black people were trying to find themselves a context when they were moved out of context. We're black people out of context. Black people in the diaspora are black people out of context. So Rasta was trying to give context to people who were in islands that they weren't born in speaking a language that they weren't raised in, trying to give themselves meaning. And we can't belittle that. It's been very important to us as black people in trying to struggle through this world that we have been forced into, through slavery, through colonization, and all of those things. So when you talk about tolerance, and I hadn't thought of your definition of it, but it's very interesting. Mm-hmm. That what do we mean? We have to kind of work out how we're going to live with people. And sometimes we just have to tolerate people. We don't agree with them, but that shouldn't be our main focus and our purpose. We shouldn't be living in a life where we're just tolerating people. We should be in a where we are living with people. And that's the kind of definition and line that we need to be drawing.
But going to your point to say, you know, I guess in quotation, it would be nice that we can live with the fact that I am who I am and whatever color it is, you know, just like everybody else sitting here. And the fact that he's got dreads, I don't have dreads, you know, and we can still look at each other as, yeah, my brother, you know what I mean? And we have whatever conversation and we, you know, and it's all good and it's all love, you know. And whereas some other people, based upon their morals and values, can look at him and go, why do you have dreads? That's so nasty. You know, you need to comb your hair, whatever, you know what I mean? But that's based upon what they believe. So doesn't that kind of fall under the word that I know that you don't like, tolerance? Because in a way, if you think about it, it's almost like saying, you know, I accept you, but I don't have to. I can agree to disagree. Let's word it that way, right? Because for example, let's say, you know, like in certain work environments, right? You know, years ago, dreads wasn't allowed, right? And so, as you know, the coming of age that we're seeing more widely, that you know, it's being accepted. So, obviously, I think the word tolerance is, you know, a part of it, because without the tolerance, you know, you're at a loss. You know what I mean? So that's why I kind of use the work as
word
example.
will
You see what I'm
to
saying?
replace tolerance?
Um, you know, I don't know, but I think there's a lot of words that is in English language that is basically means nothing.
Right.
But we just use it because even within context, like for example, what this happened, was it on Friday or Thursday or something like that, where Wendy in America, Wendy Williams,
Yes.
Wendy Williamson,
Yes.
right? She made a statement that she don't think that men should be wearing skirt and heels, and she was made to apologize for that. Now, I'm just a man. I mean, I would not have a problem with that. A woman saying that, you know. However, she was made to apologize. Now, the thing is I think there was a member in our audience, and wearing skirt. I mean, she was like, "Listen, I'm not against gay people or whatever, but at the end of the day, it's like we women go through a period where you don't experience. Well, I can understand as a male, as a female, what you understand. I mean, I can understand, but there's certain things that we women go through that men can understand. Now, to me, it makes perfect sense. She's not saying anything PC there or anything, but how, if you think about it, what tolerate within the industry? How come a woman speak of a woman issue, a certain men cannot tolerate a woman speaking on behalf of a woman issue? So I don't know which word to represent. I mean, to replace by it. But I think if we're talking about tolerating tolerance, you know, she is a woman. She said something. You know, I can't say, who are you to say that? You know what I mean? Even though if I'm wearing skirts and heels. But again, conditionally, because we're talking about conditions here. You know, the reason why we're here is because, you know, we've kind of like, I presume that we've kind of decoded that conditioning of our minds and our brain. That's why we're talking the way we're talking. So we've been liberated in that way.
There's a bit of a tension between feminists and, you know, the thing is a lot of feminists and women, I think, I don't know, I haven't heard what Wendy Williams said, but I've had similar comments. And it's a problem in the sense that women have worked so hard over time to be and we are still going through um, our standing in the society, and the certain things are expected of women, like to be gorgeous, you have to wear heels, to be this, which is a kind of, I don't know the word for it. So when you now see people going into a realm of women's struggle, it is very, you know, it, humanhood is not about glamour. Humanhood is really deep. I don't know how to. And when certain people take out certain aspects of humanhood, and that I don't know how to explain it. There is a lot of tension, and sometimes you just wonder certain things are still like patriarchal, and still men entering certain space that is not, sometimes almost degrading women and humiliating women.
And I
you
think
know.
also what you say there, because I thought about, what you say about replacing acceptance, and then it made me think about it, is that we as a society, or people living in a society, we've come to accept a certain ways of life that was not even taught, even from an African principle and morality, if you want to call it that way. We've come to accept it, whether it's right or it's wrong.
But isn't that subjective?
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Right.
Because the thing is that it's like women cannot be women anymore. I mean, women have accepted that fact, but men still continue to be women, and yet women cannot speak of that reality and truth. So in terms of tolerance, again, it's like morality. Whoever has the upper hand tolerates.
But why would you say upper hand? Because here's the flip side of what you just said, right? And I'm just going to give an example, because I remember one time I was in a conversation with a gay woman, right? And I'm pretty sure, you probably heard the same kind of phrase at one time or another. But anyways, I was in a conversation with a gay woman, right? And we're just talking about relationships, okay? And she said, I'm more man than you are, blah, 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 whatever. And I looked at her and I said, really, what makes you think you're more man than me? And everything she said was to do with, like her making things, her doing this and her doing that. And I looked at her and I totally shut it down by saying, okay, here's the one thing you will never be, okay, because of your physical makeup, right? I says, if you want to be more man than me, make a baby with your own bodily functions with the woman that you're with. Then, once you can say you made a baby, I'm convinced. That's my personal opinion on that, right? And I'm not against gays or anything like that. So, anyways.
But it's about tolerance here we're talking about, isn't it?
But again, and that's why I'm going to your point to say, even though she said that and I said what I said, this is where the word tolerance and acceptance comes in, because just because I don't agree with her thinking and I said my opinion, however, I accept and I tolerate how she feels, because, again, as you say, who am I to say, why she shouldn't feel the way she feels? You see what I mean? So that's why I use that as the example to say, about tolerance and acceptance, because just like, you would want someone to accept and tolerate you just from a basic human standpoint, they don't necessarily have to agree, but they can at least give you what is called the basic fundamental respect. What do you think?
Well, what I think, let's take a musical break, and then we can have some sip of water. And when we come back, because I would like the Association of Black Humanists to give out more information about where and when people should get all of them. And also, we're going to let a bit of cat in the bag because I think this conversation is so important that I would like it to continue here on Fairy Radio. So let's take one from Chronics. This is Skankin' Sweet right here on Fairy Radio. Yeah, Mr. Chronics. Skankin' Sweet. I like the harmony, you know. Another group that I do like the harmony is what is it called? Levi, Ijaman Levi. You know, he's got a very, very beautiful voice. You're listening to Fairy Radio. My name is Freestyle. I have very, very special people here. 3 members from the Association of the Black Humanist, Audrey, Clive, and Lola. And also I have a percussionist here. You've been hearing his voice. Actually, he's been taking control of the microphone absolutely well. I'm doing all the interviews like he's a journalist. I mean, probably that's a hidden talent there. Michael from the Big Time Drum Production. Well, Malcolm, Malcolm. Michael.
I'll accept Malcolm.
Thank you. We've heard your voice. You're not shy at all to speak. And you've just talked about, tell us about your experience as a percussionist. When it all began for you.
Okay. I'll just give you my soliloquy, as we call it.
Mm-hmm.
So I started at the age of 13. I was self-taught for many years. I had private tutors as I got older. My first professional gig, and when I say professional, meaning that I actually got paid for it, was at 17. And so, from that point on, that's when my musical journey has started. And, from that point on, I went on to play with the best of the best, the worst of the worst. And I'll just give you a short list of names that I have.
Before you go on to that, you sounded like an American. So you want to tell us about your background and where you grew up?
Sure. My background, believe it or not, is my parents are both from Trinidad and Tobago. I was born in South London, believe it or not. However, I grew up in Trinidad and Tobago, as well as I grew up in Brooklyn, New York.
Okay, so
that's, yeah.
Right, and you've lived here for a considerable time, more than
Yes.
And you still adopt the same sort of, the dialect is still...
Yeah. Well, considered I was in the States for 20-something years.
Okay.
But also I was in Trinidad and Tobago for 12 years of my life.
Right.
That's where both my parents are from.
Okay,
Yeah.
and they speak like this as well. I'm not sure.
Well, they speak a little bit different.
Yeah. So your first professional. So you learned your trade. The percussion here,
Right.
or
No.
in Trinidad?
I learned in the U.S.
Okay.
In Brooklyn, as a matter of fact.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. And apart from all the instrument, why percussion? Why the bongo?
Well, okay. Well, the reason why I picked up percussion was because at that time, when I was in school, I always had a knack for music, regardless. For as young as I can remember, and always playing on whatever, right? And so I remembered, the band director, asked would I like to play, and I said sure, and so he let me try different instruments, but when it came to the drums, I seemed to do that the best. Even though I tried the horn, I tried, I one time wanted to be a bass player, but they didn't have a bass, but they had drums, and I did that, and he looked at me right away and he said, "You're really good at this, so you should develop this." And and that's what I did.
Well, I mean, I'm going to invite also to Audrey, Clive, and Lola
Sure.
to question Michael because
Sure.
he's been doing a lot of investigative journalism on you. So I'm sure you do the same.
Absolutely.
You know, that's all. We're all human.
Yeah. I'm open to all questions.
Yeah. So you want to tell us about your first big major breakthrough in terms of an artist or a band that you joined?
Wow. Well, let me put it this way. Let me put it this way. As far as me being a part of an artist band for a long time, that would be Grammy Award winning Burning Spear. I've been with him for 5 years. That, I guess in a sense was my breakthrough. But prior to that, I had a lot of one-offs. So it would be like Shaka Khan. It would be Rita Marley and I-Threes. A lot of reggae and soca artists. Okay, I played on some records and things like that. So a lot of it was just one-offs. But as far as being the drummer for an artist for quite a while, that would be Burning Spear. But everything else up until this point, even though the last recent gig that I was a part of for about 6 months was the band called Osabisa. Okay, and hence the reason why we met, because I played on Del Richardson's gig. So yeah. So apart from that, everything else was just one-off. So give example, like last year, I played on X Factor with this artist named AO.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So as being with Bon and Spare,
Yes.
Have you guys, well, you in particular, have you recorded with him or is just on tours?
I would needed the tours. As far as me recording, I haven't recorded with Burning Spirit, even though it was talked about, but the opportunity unfortunately never came about. But yeah, but as far as the tours, yes, I was with him from 2009 all the way to 2013, and majority of it you can practically look it up on YouTube and you can see it.
Okay, that's fantastic. Before we go over to talk about Bon and Spear, probably we haven't got much time for that.
That's
because
fine.
we want to know more about you. Tell us about the big time drum production.
Oh, I've had that name. Wow, I've had that name since '93. Yeah, I've had it. Yeah, since that, because I remember one time I was talking with someone and they said, you need to brand yourself. And so I came up with this name, Big Time Drum, because I thought it was cool. So since then, I've used it, and I've turned it into a production company because apart from me being a drummer, also I write songs and I produce music of all styles, by the way. So yeah, that's why I chose the name.
I don't know, Clive, I don't know if you're thinking of anything, because don't let him go for free, because
No.
he's actually done a really brilliant journalistic work.
Because
Is it better than McGill King? No offense, Gail King. But go ahead.
okay, no, it's interesting. Very, you mentioned a lot of people there who I followed over the years, one way or the other in musical terms,
Yes.
So, but you mentioned that you didn't record with Burning Spear, but did you record with anyone else? You had quite a few names there.
I've recorded with more local artists, more so than an international artist. So that's what I was saying, was that a lot of the the things and the gigs and whatever I've done that was answering his question was just a one-off. So in other words, it was just me playing for that artist for that one day, that one night, whatever it was, whatever it was called for, but it was just for that one time, and that was it. But as far as someone long term, that was Burning Spear. And also, I would just like to offer this word of encouragement to everyone that's listening, if you don't mind. I got with Burning Spear in my 40s, right? And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because I just want to tell everyone that's listening that, you know, don't try to think of, you know, you need to do this and this by a certain time, because fate will always decide when it's your time, all right? So the reason why I'm mentioning this is because I would have never have thought that, you know, from the time I was in my 20s and I'm thinking, man, I'm going to be doing X, Y, and Z. And there are some things I did accomplish, you know, granted I did. But I never would have thought in my 40s that I would have landed the gig with Burning Spear. And funny enough, in 2009, when he won the Grammy, he called me 2 weeks and said, you have the gig, because in 2008, I subbed for him because a friend of mine called and said we needed a drummer for just 2 days. So I went and I flew out to Aspen, Colorado, in the U.S. I did the gig, and it was just supposed to be okay. That's fine. Now, 2009 came, and when he won the Grammy, called me within 2 weeks. And from that moment on, that became the next 5 years. So I'm just sharing this story to say that, you know, I don't want anyone to think of age, think of, you know, expectancies or anything like that, because I just want everybody to realize that in life, when it's your time, it'll happen at the right time and at the right moment. And so sometimes we can get caught up by thinking, oh, it's too late. Well, if I can, you know, do all these things at the age that I'm doing and still doing it, then we have no excuses. So, you know, so just like I'm sitting right here having this conversation, right? And yes, I can proudly say I am 51 years old, okay? Who would have ever thought at 51 that I'm having this great conversation with you beautiful people, you know, on Fenty Radio. For Verity. Sorry, yeah. For Verity. Excuse me. But the point is who would have ever thought that, you know, I would have gotten to this point having this great conversation, you know, at this point. So yeah, I'm just encouraging everyone, you know, that just remember that it's never, never too late. Whatever you want to do, it's never too late.
I mean, this is one coming from. You want to say anything?
No, I was going to ask you. You said you had a production company.
That's right.
Who are you producing? What kind of artists are you producing? What are you doing?
At the moment, I'm producing R&B, soul, as well as I produce soca music. I produce reggae music. I have, you know, produced music for myself, who I have dance music and as well as other little things, and also.
And you didn't bring anything here for us.
I can, you know, put something on for y'all. Sure, okay. Sure. Yeah, but I myself also as an artist that's called Uncle Mike, which is spelled Unkamike, Uncle Mike. Okay, which by the way you can find that on Instagram. Anyways, small plug, but anyways, and you can find that on Spotify, Google, Amazon, all that good stuff. Small plug. All right, fine. But anyways, so to get back to what you're asking, for right now, it's just local artists, and anyone that would like for their music to be produced, you want to do songwriting, reach out to me.
I think the one thing that's missing in African humanism is music. In humanism, in general, it's devoid of music, and I think one thing we miss as a group
Yeah,
It's
that's
good,
that,
it's
that
music.
that's a question really I've got coming up as well, because it's very interesting. But before that, this is a text message that's coming from Lorna. She goes, "The church makes financial gain through the practitioners. How do Humanist Group maintain and grow financial finance for the Humanist Group and the community?"
We're broke.
No,
We don't
how?
have-
How do you
But we rely
sort
on
of?
people donations. It's just the three of us putting together events. And people who come to our events, we ask them for a donation so that we can do what we do. There is no big financing that goes on. We're looking to write bids and do all of those kinds of things. But we don't have a steady stream of money. It's just us and our passion to do what we need to do what we want to do.
And if somebody wants to donate something, is there any channel for anyone to donate?
We haven't done that at the moment. It's
Okay.
something that we're looking into. But if you come along to our gigs, anything that we're putting on,
Mhm.
all donations are welcome. So come along with your pockets full. We do like the money that jangles, but we also like the one that folds. So whatever you can bring along is always welcome. Yeah, that's just the way that we're working at the moment.
Would you say that for right now you're more of a non-profit organization?
Absolutely. We wouldn't
Yeah.
mind profits, but
Yeah,
at the
yeah.
moment we can safely say that we're non-profit.
Okay. So I just wanted to answer your point of view, by the way. Believe it or not, music is everywhere. You'd be surprised to find out whether it's humanist, whatever the belief is. You'd be surprised to find out that music is just everywhere. It's just not something that's advertised per se. So I think that's maybe more so the question of it being more advertised within the community, because it's not to say that it's not happening. It's just not advertised per se. Because, for example, like with religious groups, they have their own style of music, right? And what's to say that there may be a style of music that can fit into the humanist movement, and it just hasn't, started yet. But then again, having said that, maybe the humanist movement doesn't need a style, because if the whole idea is we're accepting each other as humans, okay, then there really shouldn't be a style of music. It's more so to do with you bring who you are, and we're going to celebrate exactly who that is.
Good. And I'm going to get my pen and out, and we're going to write some tunes together.
Oh, absolutely,
So don't go
absolutely.
anywhere. I'm coming. I've got my pencil in my hand.
Absolutely.
These are tunes.
She's,
Some
absolutely.
humanist tunes.
Absolutely. And I'll gladly produce it. So you heard it right here, folks.
Watch this space.
That's
This
right.
music
You
is
heard it
coming.
We haven't got long to go. I mean, we've got about 15 minutes to go. What we want to focus now is that, I like the conversation. I've learned more, and probably more knowledge as well. We need to, engulf within the Humanist, association. So, I was speaking to, because I really like this, and I think in order to develop and to grow, you need a medium, and it's something I've discussed. So because I think there are a lot of texts coming in about when, and stuff like that. We're going to hear about you. So what I was going to say is that I've already offered, the Association of the Black Humanist a space here to conduct their show, give out information about what they do, where they are, what's going on, and things like that. And also, because the more they talk about what they do, the more that, the black, community, African community is going to embrace it. How do we think about that, guys?
Yeah, in terms of publicity, or in terms of where to go to reach out and meet for us online, you can go to Meetup. So it's www.meetup.com/association-of-black-humanists. That's it. And if you go there, you'll be able to see what events we've got coming up, and also where those events are, because they always have an address, and also you'll be able to join if you wish to join us and become part of Association of Black Humanists. Then that's where to go to join. We're also on Facebook. So again, Facebook.com/Association of Black Humanists. You can join us there, or not join us, but you can meet up with us there. And we're also on Twitter and usual social media outlets.
We have a YouTube channel as well.
Mm-hmm.
So you can look us up on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
We have different discussions about different issues. So we have lots of videos now on YouTube. So
Mm-hmm.
you can follow us on YouTube.
Yeah, so you were asking about, have we had any Rastafarians join our group, for example? There's on YouTube, you'll see a video there from Rasta to atheist or Rasta to humanist, and you'll see where a former Rasta has now joined our group and told his journey on that particular video. So it's an interesting collection of videos which is well worth going onto YouTube and checking us out.
Yeah, Audrey.
In terms of the space that we are very grateful that you've given us, I think we're going to try and think about how we use that space. It's an amazing opportunity for us as Africans and as Black humanists to have a voice. There is very little space for us to be ourselves and to talk about our issues and to bring ourselves forward and open. So we're really looking forward to being here and using this space. And we want to speak to your listeners and say to us, interact with us. We need to know what you are thinking. We're always guided by other people and what they're thinking and their voices and where they want to go. So we want to take that on board. So first of all, I want to thank you, Freestyle, for giving us that space and allowing us the opportunity to speak about ourselves, to talk about what our philosophy is, how we are negotiating this life here in Britain as non-believing Black people. So it's we just want to say thank you and to talk to your listeners. Hopefully we'll widen our pool of people who will interact with us and look forward to being part of the Faverity family, as it were.
And you'll be hearing this particular voice here on Faverity Radio very, very, very soon. So look out for that. Like I said, we're growing. And we want to have voice that really have something important, powerful to say, something to inspire us. And that's what we're here. We don't just open the mic and just speak, but we want to put our message out there that people can think about and impact change for themselves into their lives. I really want to thank, Clive, Audrey, and Lola for coming out today. It's been really, really inspiring. Not all the questions, obviously, it's a little bit too soon to ask most of the questions, but I think we now got a gist of, the Association of Black Humanists, what they do and who they are. And I'm sure Audrey being here, conducting a show here on Faverity Radio and seeing, obviously, the faces as well of different members will convince man like Michael and probably myself. So
I believe I'm already there.
Great.
To be honest, and just to go back to what he was saying earlier, the funny thing is, I don't necessarily go to church, and I'm not against it, but everything that has been discussed in terms of what it's about, why it's about, and so forth. I've been practically that way for many, 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 many years. You know what I mean? And that's why I share your sentiment when you say that, and I'm like, wow, so I guess in a way I'm probably more humanist than religious.
I think they need the numbers. That's what I'm saying. It's been part of it and share. The same experience as them.
Absolutely.
And things like that. So
that's in
there
fact
we go.
what happens with a lot of people when you hear about humanism and you hear what it is, then you realize, wow, I'm actually a humanist. And a lot of people get that exact same reaction.
Because,
that
you know,
Michael
I'm
just-
really fed up going to church. I mean, like weddings and all of that, you know, and funerals and stuff like that. I mean, when I heard you spoke, Michael, about the funeral thing like that, it's beautiful, you know, and this is what you would like. And even like wedding, I mean, I'm thinking, I don't like this whole going into church. Of course, now. But I don't like going on these weird places in the beach and all that. Why can't I have it in my house? You know what I mean?
But that's right. But
So-
and that's the point that I made
Exactly.
earlier.
Yeah.
To
So-
say, you know, even to this day, I mean, I play for weddings, funerals, and whatever, and you'd be surprised to find out that a lot of the weddings are actually held outside of churches. In other words, it could be homes. It can be. It can be right there on the street.
Yeah.
In other words, you'd be surprised to find out.
Yeah.
In
But
a
it'd be nice.
sense-
It'd be nice to have legally to have humanists conducting
Yeah.
those ceremony, and you're sure that you don't have to go through another means in order to be legally, binding in that sense. So
Right.
something that, and it only takes numbers to make that achievable.
Yeah.
And I think by constantly speaking of what they do here on Fefferity Radio will
Absolutely.
definitely help to increase those numbers.
I just want to give one more plug. We're meeting again on Saturday, the 29th at 4 o'clock in Bethnal Green. If you want to come along, feel free. We're talking about going back to the wild.
Yep.
So, feel free. Anybody can come along and participate and hear what we've got to say. So look on Meetup and you'll get the full details there. So last little plug just for our meeting.
Brilliant. Yeah. Thank you very much. Lola, Clive, and Audrey. It's a pleasure here to have you here on Fefferity Radio. Mike, I mean, you've had so much airspace today without talking about what you do. Just a little time. But it's fantastic.
Yes.
It's really fantastic to know that, as a percussionist, you've got the voice and the projection as
Yes.
well. And
But it's all relative.
absolutely. What I would say is that, we haven't got much time. So
No, I would like to thank my brother very, very much for having me on here. This has been a absolute pleasure, and I must say with the most absolute respect and absolute love to you, keep on playing and keep on spreading the word about life and music. Thank you, my brother.
thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Freestyle, for inviting us to Clarity Radio. And, I don't know how about you, but I'd love to do this again.
Indeed. You're welcome, sir.
Thank you.
And Lola, thank you. And Audrey, thank you. We'll see you here shortly. And that voice, remember it here. And all of the three voices you've had, actually, they're going to be consistent here. So I want to thank you very much. And also to all those who are listening, first-time listeners. Otherwise, you will find it on our podcast on Mixcloud. All right? So I want to say thank you very much for listening and continue to listen to us here on Fefferity Radio. My name is Freestyle, and I'll leave you with the capable hands of another great black, great Donna Hathaway with The Getter. Until then, take care.